It's going to be this the whole time.
It would be really funny to bleep that every time.
Yeah, like I've just.
Abby's just got Tourette's over here. All right, we're the admins of the X2x2 support group, and today we're talking about 2x2isms, or the just odd language quirks and sayings that the 2x2 church employs for various means.
Mostly a lot of thought-stopping mechanisms and ways to use their own language to differentiate themselves from every other group in the world. An insular group uses its own language. That's kind of a hallmark.
Got Abby and Mike over here, and
Kyle and Kari.
Hello.
And we went through and basically each chose I have 5. I don't know how many you guys have, but I picked ones that I heard a lot growing up that particularly impacted me or that I remember really well. I think that's kind of what we all did.
Yep.
Yeah. Phrases that affect us. The phrases that affected us a lot when we were younger that in hindsight seem really weird and or funny. Or make us upset.
And maybe are still affecting us subconsciously to this day.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I picked ones that kind of I read them and I was like, oof, that one hit me. And I remember kind of it being important when I was a 2x2. So that's the feeling I went with. That's my vibe.
Well, Kari, would you like to lead the meeting?
Sure, I'll start.
With hymn number,
no.
Read a phrase, say your thankful.
For real though, actually, my first one is from a verse in the Bible, John 3:30. Trigger warning, everybody.
It's going straight into the Bible. By lightning.
This one was rephrased a lot, and the way that I remember it being rephrased is, "I must decrease that he may increase," he being God. This one essentially meant make yourself small so that God is the only thing showing in your life. And of course, when workers are talking about God, they actually mean themselves in the meetings. So it was making yourself and your human nature smaller and weaker, and the meetings are the point. And that kind of messes with your head because it's just, I must be. Oh, sweet.
Nice. Yeah.
Cool. Do you guys remember that one too?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's I think we mentioned in the chat earlier that that's part of a hymn or something, or there was it was a hymn and it was a Bible verse and it was something else.
Yeah, every once in a while.
It is a hymn too, I think. Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot, but every once in a while there is crossover between the hymn book and the Bible.
I said, I said it's the trifecta
of rare.
In the Bible, in the hymn book, and in the worker sermons.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the hymn is I am, I am decreasing, he is increasing, or something like that.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the other thing. These are all innuendos, oftentimes.
I literally was thinking that same thing. It's let God be bigger. Okay.
Yeah. and again, it just goes back to you need to be tiny and insignificant. And,
Yeah, and it's just vague enough that you make it whatever you want. So if you're a very scrupulous little kid, you are miserable. That's the point of most of these, actually.
Yeah, totally.
Most of the phrases we read tonight are used to make little kids miserable.
Well, but it impacts you into adulthood because you grow up and you not only do you have no self-confidence or low self-confidence, but it almost feels wrong to build up yourself and to have self-confidence because everything you've been taught goes against that idea of making yourself it not necessarily in a I'm totally awesome and important way, but just anything the opposite of making yourself invisible and small is sinful and wrong. So it's so hard to overcome that stigma in your own brain.
Yeah.
And it really ties into another one that Mike, maybe that could be the next one. Pretty sure this is the next one.
Yeah.
We're using little to describe everything.
Yes.
I mean, we've got the little meeting is, I mean, that's a given, but then we've especially overseas workers are like, oh, we just had,
Our little
our
mission.
little mission in our little batch
In our
and
little field.
our little field in our little country.
Yeah. And this
We have
person
little family.
and-
We have a little family listening in.
And they just so-and-so little child just professed and gives his little part.
Little part in the
Has
meeting.
a little thought.
Yeah, a little thought.
A little THOT.
Yeah. That should have been on the list.
Yeah, I don't know what about little is seen as virtuous.
It really is.
But it is all back to
Self-denying.
that sort of, it's the diminishing yourself.
It's often in an infantilizing way too, I feel
Yeah.
like the point is to make yourself childlike, which really ends up being like keep everybody back to the small things so that the workers in the meetings have the ultimate power, pretty much.
Yeah, childlike is a good way to minimize too, when you combine those concepts of like little and childlike. You're not speaking up, you're not rocking the boat, you're not affecting anybody in any sort of way, you're just filling your place. That's another phrase that kind of goes along with it, of just
Your
like
little place.
I'm filling your little place, just stay here and don't do anything. And a lot of people live their life like that. I did for a long time.
I think also the little thing also makes it seem like we're just these little vulnerable little puppies in the middle of this big vicious world, and we're just this sweet little church that's always under attack. And it really, like, you don't have like a corrupt regime in a little church.
Right.
Like it really takes any of the it's hard to.
We're not a church. We're just a little group of Christians.
Yes.
Yeah, and it
Or-
feeds into that.
Yeah.
It feeds into the idea of persecution, and because, like you were saying, Abby, it makes the world and the devil and the human nature sound bigger and like more powerful. We're just these tiny little things. And then, like, I remember entire worker sermons built around the idea of your place being very little, and like almost encouraging that idea of like, you don't have to have this big important place. It's a tiny little place, and God sees his little seed growing, and like everything's little, and
It's very innocent. Makes everything sound very a little meeting. It's very innocent. Our little, everything is so innocent, when really, like, there's a super corrupt leadership. There are predators.
Yeah.
There's been like a lot of harm. But when you say little, it doesn't seem like there can be. And people this is the phrase that we hear when people don't want to leave right now is, but we just love our little meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that. That's like the number one
100% of the
thing
time.
you hear right now. People staying in despite the abuse crisis. Yeah.
You have to be very little so that God can increase in you.
Excuse me?
I mean, I can cut this later if we need. It's all going to go back to innuendo, I feel like.
Well, it's like
There's going to be a director's cut that's unrated.
I heard this story growing up a lot from a worker of like this little kid who asked the worker, "How big is God?" And the worker was like, "As big as you want him to be." And it's like, speaking of innuendo.
No, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that exact.
Sitting in
none of
this meeting, like giggling about innuendos to like your friend or something, is definitely like a good memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tiny shred of normalcy in all of it.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize how many there were. Like every single hymn.
Yeah, like
It's really bad. I mean, should we shift to the next? Should we shift to this one?
Well, maybe we should come back to that. We need Kyle or Abby. You guys need to.
Oh, okay.
Throw one in there.
Go for it. I don't have any good segues.
They're all innuendos now. I can't.
It's the problem.
You start at the top of your list.
Yeah, mine are all completely different. Yeah, just go to the top of somebody's list.
Yeah, we can do this one. This one was a really big one. It's yeah, it's the classic like separating ourselves from the world. That because anybody who's watching this who is or was a 2x2 will know this, but anybody who wasn't, for context, 2x2s typically do live and work and school in the world. Like they don't typically do a lot of homeschooling. There's not a standard anyway.
They don't live on compounds.
No. So they definitely live in the world, but the idea is that they're in the world, but not of. There's a separation. In the world, but not of the world, even though we're just literally like anybody else. But we would go to convention and like there would be a whole vibe toward the end of convention about going back into the world, but not letting yourself become one of, become worldly or embrace the world too much. And yeah, it's very culty.
Yeah, in fact, in my family, like we lived close enough to the grounds that we would usually drive back and forth, but like some families frowned upon that because leaving the grounds at all was going back into the world, and the radio might turn on and you might hear music, and then your whole spirit of convention is ruined because apparently the
yacht is no match for the radio.
You might have to go to the gas station and they'll have one of those little tiny TVs at the gas pump.
My family was definitely a stay at convention family all the time.
Same.
And that's funny because we weren't at all. Because my grandparents.
And I remember being a little bit like, really?
Yeah.
What did yours do?
No, we always went. We always stayed because we were about like an hour away from our convention. So
we were 45 minutes, but my parents just really wanted to go back to their own beds at night.
No, we didn't want it that badly. But like, I don't know. I kind of liked staying too. Like,
yeah.
Like,
I did stay on the ground, especially when I was older with friends and stuff.
Yeah. No, my parents always had a trailer and stuff.
It was always annoying when your friend or your like the person you wanted to go on a walk with didn't stay on the grounds because they were never there before the first meeting.
Yes.
Or after the last one.
Yep.
Right.
So you couldn't
if it was
and make out with your secret.
Go on a walk.
If it was a crush, it was super disappointing.
Yeah, it's minimal.
Like, what do you mean you're not staying for hot chocolate?
I know that's a prime pickup line time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
Do you want to get hot chocolate with me?
Yeah, you don't even have to worry about another meeting coming later. You just hang out.
Right.
Get hot chocolate and go on a walk. You can't go on a walk at that time.
They would close the trails. Yeah, no, the trails were closed that late at night, so you couldn't.
That's true.
You had to just be sneaky, I guess.
People still use them because at least at Milltown it was still light after the last meeting.
Yeah, I don't remember it like being blocked. I mean, I suppose maybe a worker would have come along and told you to go back to the dorms or something.
Yeah, we had a cord across the trail at ours.
What?
Yeah.
At Olympia they did?
Way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah,
Oh,
if I
That's
remember
really
right.
interesting.
Comment below.
No,
if I'm
I
wrong about
remember.
that.
I remember people walking after the last meeting in Milltown.
In the world, but not of the world is one of those mind trip ones though that messes up little kids, and so you're already a little bit weird when you're younger because you can't go to movies and don't watch TV, and if you're a girl, you got to dress like that, and then but learning that being somewhat miserable is virtuous is a real trip. It's employing a lot of therapists right now because even now, like if we want to talk about how it affects us later, even now, there's a tiny part of, I think, well, I'll just speak for myself. There's a tiny part of me that still views myself as a little separate, even from coworkers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I don't know if I'll ever feel completely like, I'll always feel a little bit outside of the norm.
Yeah.
Because exactly. Because your brain is just so tied to like, discomfort is good and normal.
Yeah.
That's how it is for me anyway.
Wait, what do you mean discomfort is
like discomfort in just normal environments, like around coworkers, normal people or whatever.
Like,
just always knowing that you're like a little bit set apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like our friend circle now is essentially ex-professing people. You know?
You're right.
Yeah.
And it's not that we've made any sort of judgment call. It just that's what works right now. So yeah.
Yeah. And how are kids supposed to make friends or even know if they can make friends? Like it's very vague. Like, well, we're in the world, but we're not of the world. Like you can make friends with them, but you're not really the same as them. So it can only be, just like because we hang out at school.
Yeah, being a little kid and having two sets of books running on your mind all the time. It's like you have your normal like baseline software where you're interacting with the world normally, and you have this other set of software that's like constantly debugging the world. It causes your brain to freeze a lot, but you just get used to that.
And you can't just like not interact with people at school, because you are supposed to be an example to them, which is like foremost in your mind, even if you're hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to, but like the way it was told to me is like, you can't, they're never going to be your closest friends, because you can't relate on the spiritual level, which is the most important level.
Yeah, that's one of the things post 2x2 that I think is funny is a lot of these that we're going to talk about tonight are in other religions too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that.
That's
like this
really
is
weird.
This is a classic kind of across the fundamentalist spectrum.
Yeah, and so I have oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say this segues really well into Kyle's first one here.
Yeah, that you might be the only Bible your friends will read. Or you might be the only light your friends will see, kind of tying it into like, don't put your light under a bushel and all this stuff. The amount of responsibility to heap on a very small child, I cringe now. I mean, there was a tiny part of me that was worried when my kids got to professing age, because I realized how young they were. And then hearing of friends who are still in meetings, their kids as young as 6 is the youngest I've heard professing. I was just like, I don't like that at all. I don't like the idea that you're having a little kid who's just still trying to build a model in their head of what the world even looks like, and they're having to build 2 of them, and one of them doesn't like the other one, and it's like, that is so stressful. And I remember it being stressful, but also that's virtuous and good. So again, discomfort and feeling completely sort of lost in all of it, and constantly trying to make a bunch of stuff match that does not match at all and is designed not to. Doing that from the ages of before you can remember on is kind of abusive. I got to say, I don't really like that. Yeah, and then finding out that you have to do it. You have to do it because the kids around you might go to hell if you don't. It's like,
I was going to say, it doesn't just start at professing age. It's you're hearing these things from the time you're a baby.
Very
it's
little.
Imprinted on your brain for as long as you can remember, like you said.
Yeah.
That you have to basically, it goes back to the making yourself small. Like, you're not a human, you're not a person, you're a walking Bible.
Yeah, you're a tool for something else.
Yeah, and well, I was 6 when I professed. By the way, when our kids were 6, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Seriously? Like
totally. Yeah.
What? I can't even imagine. I mean, I can't. Hayden is 9, and I can't imagine. But like this and the last one, the other function that they serve is actually making the group itself more tight knit, because the more that you have this idea that you go out into the world and you're not the same as everybody else, the more you're safer. You're more, the only place that you're allowed to be comfortable, and the only place you're really allowed to feel safe, which turns out it wasn't that safe, but the only place that you're told you're allowed to feel that is within this tight knit group. And it's like a mutual persecution, I think that's what I've always called it anyway. I don't know if that's the official name, but yeah, it tightens by having this like discomfort, this whatever, like never quite fit into the world, always a little bit rejected. It makes the group even tighter to itself.
Yeah, that kind of segues into my next one. If you guys are ready for the next one, I have that one is exactly what I was thinking of. You're safest in the middle to fold away from the edges. You nailed it, Mike. Yeah, that's exactly like. And I think what the 2x2s meant by this was, if you are exploring with jewelry or makeup, as far as if you're a woman, obviously, if you're missing a lot of meetings, if you are drinking, if you're exploring sexuality, you are not in the middle of the fold. You're on the edges. And if you're a sheep on the edge of the fold, those are the ones the wolves are just going to run by and grab. Like,
right.
And that's the visual that I had in my head growing up of like, I need to be in the middle, surrounded by lots and lots of sheep, and not even close to the edge, because those are the ones that the wolves are grabbing.
Picked off.
Yeah, you'll get picked off.
But this is the fancy way that they get away with never writing anything down too, So when they say they don't have rules, that's true. This is so much worse. They have a bunch of innuendo based on the fact that they can sort of guilt trip you into acting a certain way. If there's no rule, if there's no boundary on anything, you're automatically going to go as far away from it. I mean, this is the most
explicit,
vivid. Yeah, this is the most vivid description of what a lot of the rules, quote unquote, are meant to do. They say they don't have rules because if they did, people would test them. So if you do this instead, you can guilt trip somebody for not even doing anything wrong. They just haven't done it quite right enough. And that's the type of scrupulous type of thing where people who have a tendency towards scrupulosity anyway are just turned into a mess, because it's like, because you can never quite do it right.
Yeah, that's why this one freaked me out so much. And there's so many variations of this. Like if you say, do you think meetings are the only way? They'll be like, well, no, but they're the best way. There's so many variations of, well, we're not even going to test the boundaries. We're not even going to go close to the edge. This is actually something I'm working on in my life, like interpersonally with people, is like I will not
boundaries with them.
Well, not testing boundaries, but having boundaries and having clear boundaries, because I'm really passive in a lot of my relationships because I'm afraid of where boundaries are, and I don't even want to go close to them. Like I don't want to ask where the boundaries are. I don't even want to get close to them. So as a result, I end up being super passive. And
you never articulate the boundary when you're in meetings, because if you were to do so, it puts a name on it for you to approach, and you don't want to approach it. You want it to be kind of this vague.
Yeah, you want to keep it as far away as possible.
Yeah, you don't want to be able to define it.
Right.
It goes right along with the whole works-based thing of like, if you want to get to heaven, well, you never know if you're going to or not on any given day. You just got to try literally harder all the time. All the time. You
1 foot on the edge of hell.
Never know if you're doing good enough. And also, so like we've actually heard a worker say that, well, yeah, we don't really believe, like a lot of this stuff, we don't really believe it's like skirts and stuff. Like we don't think that's really that important. But the unfortunate part is that the people police each other. And I'm like, well, that's because you've always told them, and you still told them, to stay closest to the inside of the flock. So if you have a group of people and you want to be like the most holy one, everybody is clamoring to be the most holy one. Like, first of all, it doesn't work that way. Like that's not, it doesn't work that way. But they do end up policing each other, because it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be better than that. I'm going to be better than that, because that's what they've taught them to do. So no, it's not like the people's fault that they're policing skirts. It's the fact that that's how people can be closest to the middle. And that's why they never, even if they don't think it's biblical, they don't rock the boat. I was talked to somebody in the church several years ago about this. They didn't think the skirts were biblical, but they're like, but I'm not going to rock the boat. I don't think that's the right thing to do either.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they don't want to be the one to test the boundaries.
You don't want to offend anybody either. That's the other thing they always talk about, is causing offense. So if you have this constant, like, stay in the middle of the fold and don't offend anybody because you might push them away from the fold, now all of a sudden you just have these people who are just like, quivering masses in the middle of a bunch of other people at best. Or you get people who just wander away because they're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. But for people who really do believe it and are true believing, the spectrum starts at, never explores anything in life and extends into becomes a worker. And that's how the ministry is stocked, right? It's a lot of people who knew that to do the best they could was to do a little bit better than they thought they could do, to show a little bit more faith, to get a little closer to the center. And so that's why you get a lot of people in the ministry. And I feel comfortable saying this now because we've talked to a lot of ex-workers. There's a lot of workers who aren't even clear on their beliefs, but they're just trying so hard to work a little harder, show a little more faith, do a little better. And they'll do that through an entire career in the work. Yeah. It's devastating to talk to these people.
Yeah. Totally. You see it in sermons. Like I've read through a lot of sermons and see it so many times that it is the highest calling, that it is the most proud a parent can be is if their kid goes into ministry. Like we've had this pounded into our heads for decades. That's like, this is the middle of the flock.
Well, yeah. I mean, having a kid in the ministry is like another like little safety fence that's already in the middle of the fold. It's like, I've got a kid here who's like anchoring me already.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one that you were basically just talking about, Kyle.
Yeah, is it one of mine?
Don't be a stumbling.
Nope, you were just, it's my, I think it's mine, but you were
Yeah, go for it.
essentially just describing it. Like the idea that what you do could cause one of your, fellow 2x2s to lose out. You were mentioning something about that a minute ago, and I was like, oh, that's like literally the thing that I chose.
Yeah, the stumbling block thing is a huge deal. And it's funny because we didn't plan on this necessarily, but now Kari and I have talked several times, even on other podcasts and stuff, about how we didn't talk to each other about our own beliefs until we were deconstructing them, because consciously, not because we were trying to hide something. I've heard some people say, oh, that professing families hide stuff from each other all the time. That's technically that's true, but that's not the spirit of why they're doing it. They're not doing it to hide and get away with stuff. They're trying really hard not to offend another person.
Mm-hmm.
That I'll speak for
your
us.
Own spouse.
Yeah. So for me, it actually started with me when I was trying to learn more about the Bible. I didn't want to do that wrong, so I didn't tell Kari about it. I told her about it a couple times, and she didn't like it. So I was like, oh, okay, never mind. And I kept doing it, but off to the side. I wasn't trying to hide it. Mm-hmm. It was just like, if I cause her to stumble, that's really bad on me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing. I mean, we have like a different dynamic because we left so early in our marriage, but still like up until that night that we had the conversation that kind of broke the ice on the whole thing, we never talked about a single doubt or anything. Like,
I can't say that it was necessarily like something that was really going on in my brain a lot, though. Like, I can't say it was something that was really not, because the things that nag at me, I say, like, I don't know how to not do that. So, but I mean, it was like,
I know. So you
had researched a lot more.
I had a lot of stuff tumbling around in my brain. Not necessarily like, it wasn't like a year prior to us having our conversation. Like, I was thinking, oh, I need to get out of this, or like, this isn't making sense. It wasn't like that. But like, once I had that permission to like speak freely about it, then like it all just came tumbling down.
So the same conversation that I had with this person about skirts not being biblical, but that they didn't want to rock the boat. The other thing was like, if I did maybe it's not a conviction for me, but maybe it's important to somebody else. And if I were to start wearing pants to meeting, it might be a stumbling block for them. That's literally, I think those words were used, was like, so this is how these rules stay maintained, is like, you might send somebody to hell if you push it.
Yeah.
And then this ties into the abuse thing. Like, how many survivors of abuse were told, leave it alone, because if you basically if you don't forgive this person, you will condemn them to hell, or we can't kick this person out because we're condemning them to hell. And so literally, like, you just reporting criminal abuse toward yourself could be considered a stumbling block, and it would be worse for you than for the person that committed the abuse.
Yeah, like, that's exactly it. And the tendency to hear all the time that you need to be little, and then don't be a stumbling block for somebody else. I heard that from very early on in my life, and repeated daily almost, because there was a constant fear of offending other people, and also it's a constant fear of not upholding the good name of professing or whatever. And so when you grow up with that, you end up with this sort of non-confrontational thing, like this thing where you never talk about what you're talking about. You never talk completely authentically. I would not say dishonestly, but I would say not authentically, because you're constantly scared that whatever's inside of you is going to actually damage another person's soul. And so there's this constant fear of authenticity, and a constant feeling like whatever's going on in the room is your responsibility. You're carrying this responsibility everywhere you go, including meeting rooms with 30 people in them. You start saying like your testimony gets very small and very simple, and you don't explore even your own faith to that end, because you're afraid of pushing anybody else's buttons. And having that running on your brain all the time can't possibly be healthy, I don't think.
This is actually the reason that's given when you ask people in the US and Canada why they use grape juice and not wine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Literally, what if there's an alcoholic in the meeting?
Yeah.
It only
And yet-
exists here.
And yet they can allow alleged pedophiles in the meeting.
Yeah.
With kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fine.
Right.
Well,
The
and like
juxtaposition.
everywhere but the U.S. and Canada drinks wine for their
Yeah.
emblems.
I heard this one a lot referenced to watching movies and going to movie theaters. Like,
Mhm.
well, it might be okay, like you can handle it spiritually, but if someone else found out and they started doing it, it might be too much for their faith, and then you're being a stumbling block.
Exactly.
Again, it's just reinforcing rules.
Yeah.
You know?
It's also
All
funny,
about
like
unity.
if you take it like super literally, like we're saying the phrase stumbling block, like
You're just like setting a cinder block right in front of them.
yeah,
That's what I
that's
picture.
what I'm imagining
The
too.
visuals,
But
pretty
also,
funny.
like it
Very
seems like the
cartoon.
stumbling block must be like in front of a cliff because usually you stumble
Yeah.
and like you just recover and just keep on
Yeah,
going, right?
Stumble.
Right.
Yeah, but this is like a stumbling block at the top of like a giant chasm, and it's just gonna kill everybody. That
Yeah, they just fall all the way down and explode somehow.
Yeah, they're not like,
So-
don't be a banana peel for your brother.
Yes,
That would be good.
you know, it's like a classic Mario Kart reference.
Yeah. Don't throw shells at your brother.
Like a 2x2 version of Mario Kart, and one of them will be the weapons will be a
A
stumbling block.
stumbling block. Oh no, I got hit by a stumbling block.
It's a
Explodes.
Oh man,
Good
It is
times.
funny when you like deconstruct it and think about it. It's so ridiculous.
yes.
Is that biblical, this a stumbling block, or where does that even come from?
Oh, that's a
No,
good
there-
question.
Well, there's a lot about offenses, but
Yeah, but
I haven't actually
wonder
looked
where
up
the
stumbling
actual
block.
phrase comes from. Now we're all
we'll
on
do
our
some
phones.
research here.
yeah,
Yeah,
now we're
we're all-
looking.
We're gonna have a dozen Christians in the comments. Like,
yeah.
yeah, it is biblical.
Yeah,
Appearing in
comment
both
below if you.
Old and New
Yes.
Testament.
Oh, there it
Isaiah,
is. It was
Take the
even in
stumbling
red
block out of the
lettering.
way. Oh, is it really? There's a bunch in the Old Testament. There's lots of stumbling blocks back then.
I mean, to be
It's
fair,
like
the
they're
Old
taking-
Testament, man, that was stumbling block territory back then. In the Old Testament.
Yeah, it says, "Let us not therefore judge one another anymore, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way."
Yeah, well, there you go.
And that's a stumbling
Black
block, all
and red.
one word, by the way.
And actually, it's
Yeah.
in several
Oh.
places. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses just on this,
Wow,
on the AI overview. Anyway,
that was like a big deal for them
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
It's a big
I wonder
deal.
though, like what is the actual translation? You know, like what
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is it?
banana peel.
Is it
probably.
maybe it started out as a
Banana
banana peel.
Yeah.
Refers to anything. Yeah, I'm looking it up, but I can't.
Like, what was a stumbling block for, if not for causing someone to stumble? You know, like,
Right.
Yeah,
like was it labeled?
There was like a manufacturer, like somewhere in Arimathea or something.
Right. It like says Acme stumbling
This
on
is-
the
Acme
side.
stumbling blocks.
This
Oh
is an
my gosh,
interesting
okay.
point that Google sums up sort of how the 2x2s meant it. A stumbling block is not always a direct sin, but can be any action that causes another to sin or fall away from faith. So it's not even like you're sinning. You're just like throwing sin at other people. And
there's got to be more to that. I wonder what the original. I wonder what the
Like, you
original
want
Hebrew
some
word
sin?
is like. Something else.
Yeah. I feel like my
This
thoughts
one
have
just
already
really
been
upset me.
shared.
This is classic testimony fodder.
Yeah.
Man, I don't think there was a meeting that you could sit through
Mhm.
that didn't have this said at multiple times in testimony time.
Usually
So at the
followed
beginning-
by 5 minutes of a testimony. At least.
At the beginning of this call, which Mike will probably cut out, but now I'm bringing it back in. Mike was like, I'm not really sure how to like start off. Like what's a good introduction for these videos? This was an intro for everybody's testimony. Like if you weren't sure how to
Totally.
kind of like segue into the next testimony, you would just throw this gem out there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a-
that, or I'm so
Between
thankful
this-
to be here.
That or there's also like I don't feel like I have much to share. I don't
I don't feel like I have much
add.
to add.
yeah.
But usually, like that was like Wednesday night meetings was especially
Yeah.
for that because you're
Mhm.
all talking about the exact same
This
thing. So like
Yeah.
once
chapter.
the first
I
4
know.
people are done, it's like
And you
I
can't,
literally don't have anything to add.
and you can't discuss it. They're monologues. Testimonies
Right,
are monologues.
yeah.
So it's not like you can
Yeah.
even discuss what somebody else just said. You have to just
Yeah,
have a
there's
new
no
thought.
back and forth.
Right.
Yeah, and it actually ties into that little feeling. I don't have much to add. My thoughts have already been shared. I'm just thankful to be here. Like I'm not really adding any value to this meeting, but here are my 10 minutes of testimony.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That is such a thing though in testimonies, is people just like criticizing themselves insidiously the entire testimony.
Vibe. I at therapy the other day, I stood up and I showed my therapist, like, there's only one way to describe how somebody gives their testimony, and especially women. And I'm tempted to stand up and do it, but like,
do it.
You have to, because you can't do it sitting down.
Nice.
I didn't really prep my whole outfit for this, but you do this thing where you like rock back and forth.
Yes.
Level, and you're just your voice is a little bit shaky, and you're just happy to be here. And like sometimes you curl the edges of your Bible, but it's like a trance, and it's very little.
Sometimes people's voices get a little bit like fainter
the
longer they go on,
or
the princess voice.
Yeah.
Or tearful. A lot of people cry. Yeah.
I noticed listening to conventions, a lot of the testimonies just go like this. Like the voice just gets higher and higher and more emotional and more tiny as it goes.
Well, and part of it too is like, it's so like, at least for me, it was so stressful giving your testimony.
Yeah.
That like you're just in like this, just trying to get it done mode, and so you're probably talking faster and faster and faster the further you go on, and also just nervousness in general will do that.
Well, your voice is shaky because you're nervous, but also it was like amplified. At least for me, I definitely like, and I know people who had extra kind of shaky voices, and it was definitely a put on. It was like you can make your voice sound like that, like you can just do it. Yeah. I could go, and if I had a wig, I could go to a meeting and like play the part just fine.
Yeah, I mean the emotion is part of that whole stress factor too, right? Like maybe they it's not like they were just faking their tears. Like
no,
we were very genuine in that piece of it. It's just like the stress can literally make you cry.
Yeah, because it wasn't necessarily tears about what you were talking about. It was tears from like the trance of it all and the nerves of it all. Like tears. The times
where I got emotional in testimonies, from what I remember, are usually when I was talking about basically how short I was falling, and like all the failures of the week in it. And just being that hard on yourself, it's almost like a trauma response in the moment. Like you're actively traumatizing yourself without realizing it. Obviously, I didn't realize it at the time. But the other thing with this, I feel like my thoughts have already been shared. I remember workers being in like Sunday or Wednesday meetings with, like regular meetings, not gospel meetings, but if they would stand up at the end of the meeting, because they would be taking the meeting. So they would say, like, I feel like my thoughts have already been shared, but that just proves God's unity. Like everyone had the exact same thoughts because God's spirit is uniting us all, not because we're all reading the same chapter. That's not why.
Yeah. Or in some cases, it wasn't even a chapter. It was like a collection of verses.
Like very, very specific. There was a very specific message. Like some old worker made a sermon and like led us to the point of his sermon. Like that's it. Yeah, it was very pointed.
Yeah.
With the go ahead.
It would just be like stumbling blocks, and then it would have every verse about stumbling blocks. By the end, it was like, there's no through line here.
Yeah, no, for real.
And
or
without
the sower
context.
and the seed, which is like one parable in the Bible, and everyone's talking on it. You have 20, 30 people talking on these.
But the sower and the seed, 2x2s can go on that for ages.
It's one of their favorite topics.
Yeah, it is. With the tears thing, really quick, I wanted to mention that we're always like just blown away by how many people are like standing up giving their testimonies at convention and talking about how they are so happy to be amongst the happiest people on the earth while they are bawling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't on the list, but it's something I wrote down right before. It's kind of a follow-on to that. The whole like I'm happy as I'm crying thing. Mm-hmm. This isn't a phrase, but it's a thing that they do. It's modifiers before something descriptive. So like, it's not love, it's godly love. You know, it's godly fear. It's godly is a big one, or true faith, true fellowship, true whatever. And what it does is it actually inverts the meaning of what they're saying afterwards. So you wouldn't have to say godly love if you knew whatever they were talking about was love, right? So they say godly love because it means you're being a jerk. That's what it actually means.
It's conditional.
You know? It's conditional.
love.
You throw a conditional word on it and it flips the meaning of it. And like when you go to convention, you have true peace. This is true fellowship. It means you don't have peace or fellowship. Like you wouldn't have to say that otherwise, you know.
Modifiers,
that kind of thing. It's so funny to me now to hear that. And you see this. It's actually a very human thing to do. You see it in politics. You see it in all the churches. They're just like, well, it's like the no true Scotsman fallacy for everything. No true anything. No true 2x2. No true professing urbanite. You know, this is true fellowship. This true fellowship is what you have when you're here with a bunch of people that you don't know, but you're probably related to. Not that fellowship where you're having fun at school. That's not true fellowship. That's happy, but it's not true joy though. You know, that's the other one.
Those are
true
friendships,
joy,
but they're not.
Yeah. Like the world has happiness that they enjoy. We have true joy, which we don't enjoy.
Little is actually one of the modifiers that they use all the time.
It totally is.
Yeah, little
family,
exactly.
little meeting, little place.
Well, I mean, look at we say 2x2, but I forget, like, we sometimes need to be not using 2x2. It is called the truth. The truth is its actual name. Like that is the name that they have given it is the truth. We obviously prefer to use 2x2, but like you can't forget that true love, true gospel, true ministry, the true meeting, you know, like the true church, all of that. It's named the truth. It's integral to everything.
Yeah, to be clear, growing up, none of us would ever have called ourselves 2x2s. That wasn't even in our vernacular.
A true godly follower of Irvine would not say 2x2.
I mean, we didn't even know what it existed. I didn't until I was leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I knew because I'd done research on the devilish internet, but.
Well, Mike, do you remember when we were younger? Do you remember, I'm not going to say the name of the worker. There was an older sister worker in our field who talked about this extensively because the secret sect had gone through our field and everyone had gotten upset and burned it. And she spoke several times over the course of a couple of years. I actually professed through her. She spoke several times about we're not 2x2s. 2x2 is a piece of wood.
I heard that too from different workers.
I mean, I've heard people say that, but I never. I obviously like was just under.
You're probably a little young,
the age range for that. But yeah, I mean, you probably would have been what, like between 8 and 10.
Yeah, because I professed when I was about 10 or 11. I actually don't remember how old I was when I professed, but it was 10 or 11, and she was in our field for those years, 9, 10, 11, something like that.
But I heard brother workers preach that in my area too.
Yeah, so it was in the
They thought that was so funny.
I'm sure that they I mean, there wasn't email back then, but there was a handwritten chain letter that was going around.
Well, that's funny because that's how I describe it. That's how when I like, oh, what was the church you were raised in? And I'll be like, oh, well, we called it the truth internally, but it's you can search it by 2x2s, and I say that 2x2s like lumber, like a piece of wood.
Yeah, it's 2x2. Yeah.
It's 2x2, just like a piece of wood.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we have?
Was that your part?
That was my part.
Was that just the?
I should say I'm thankful and sit down.
We could do the next one, the Kari's the self-help one.
Oh yeah.
This is kind of like the only light
self-help book you need. Man, this is.
You have to tread a little bit lightly here, depending on our audience, because some people still think that it's the only self-help.
So I have something in mind with this though, which is that. So I have this memory. Hopefully, I'm not like calling her out too much, but I have this memory of when I was young, of my mom going to the self-help book section and like feeling guilty about it. Mm-hmm. That she was getting self-help books for, whatever she was struggling with at that time. And when I first started therapy after leaving meetings, I had to go through this process of it's okay to do therapy. It's okay to, first of all, trust someone who's worldly.
Mm-hmm. Not in the fold.
Yeah.
And also
right.
take care of my own mental health. Taking care of my mental health doesn't mean I'm failing somehow. Or
Right.
like in the 2x2s, it would mean you're not praying hard enough, you're not trusting God enough. And really all you need to do is go read your Bible. Kyle and I were in a meeting once shortly before we left,
Right
where
before.
our elder's wife gave a testimony about people going to couples therapy and how really they should just read the Bible together. It was like,
And it came up out of nowhere.
that
So
can
we're
be
like,
so harmful for your mental
why?
health.
What's happening?
It was so out of
Yeah,
control.
right.
I was like, oh
Yeah.
no, he's throwing a stumbling block in front of her.
So
But it was funny
if
because
we are
we
the-
had oh sorry,
Go ahead.
we ourselves, while we were in meetings, had gone to couples counseling one time. And so I think both of us, we just both blew it off when we heard it, because we're like,
For
no,
my anxiety. Like the
Right.
reason we went is because I had so much anxiety. You were struggling to understand it. I was struggling to portray what it felt like.
yeah,
And we were like, maybe therapy would be helpful for us to like communicate through this.
I think it was,
And,
right?
and
I mean,
it was, but like
we
in
went
and
a
of
couple
itself,
times,
the
so-
fact that I had a mental health issue that took both of us to therapy, it was like
yeah,
something that I had to internally come to terms with, because this is a phrase that we actually heard. The Bible is the only self-help book, or variations of like, you
only
know,
self-help book thou shalt need.
go to the Bible for or prayer for your all of your problems in life.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
true
now
of
they're
like
going-
marriage problems, financial problems, raising your children. This is what the workers would tell you to do. If you were in an abusive marriage, go pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
If your church is experiencing a crisis of CSA, we don't need guidelines, because that doesn't have the spirit, and it's probably advised
Same
by
thing.
outside professionals.
Yeah.
We just need to follow the Bible, which apparently we haven't been doing this whole time, and we're going to start doing it now.
That's
Now
such a
we're gonna-
funny thing. Yeah, it's when people say that you should only use the Bible in the middle of a chaotic problem that they got because they only use the Bible, they don't understand how
Right.
circular that is. It's so obvious. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't even know how to have this conversation with you then.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you are the only Bible that other people will ever read, but the Bible is the only self-help book, like, are you also the only self-help book that other people will ever read?
Yeah,
And
we're
do you-
basically,
Like a lot
we're
of
basically all
responsibility.
just like a bunch of Renaissance men and women.
It feels like a big responsibility for this one.
Should we be speaking in Old English all the time or what?
It's not old
If you need-
English.
I mean, Middle English.
Oh, we got corrected
Yeah,
so
right.
much for that in the comments.
The
of our
number of
Mormon
corrections we
stories.
got from Mormon stories, like, well, it's actually not Old English. It's like,
Oh,
it doesn't
great.
matter.
Come on.
But is the spirit there?
Not the
That's
point.
what counts.
I couldn't believe how
Are
many
you saying
people
it
were
with the
bothered
right
by
spirit?
I know.
that. Yeah.
Uh,
Oh man.
The
we're not
other
the
thing
only
about
church that does
this-
that, by the way. Sorry, go ahead.
about the self-help book is like that every self-help book is created by somebody worldly. So
Yeah.
Right.
if you were going to rely on anything like that, you're essentially just taking advice from the world.
Right.
And
Same
yeah,
with therapy.
not
Yeah.
cool.
And it'll lead you away, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, there's a constant fear of it's leading you toward the edge of the fold, or whatever it is.
right.
If it doesn't come from a worker, it's going to lead you. In their minds, it's a very binary situation. You're either getting, pulled magnetically away from the fold or into the fold. It's one of the two.
Right.
So anything that we can't describe to our own satisfaction as pulling you closer to the middle must be sending you away. That's the only option.
Oh, I think
Well,
the fact that this is in play makes it that much crazier that there were some places that were kind of a little bit more progressive in dealing with the crisis, and they were turning to, outside resources and things like that were super benign in reality, like things like Diane Langberg, who is like
Yeah.
very much, speaks the language of the 2x2s pretty much. But they were, there was a lot of people that were still like, oh, we don't need to take her advice. She's one of
Yeah.
those.
One area called in Grace and went through that whole thing, and I assume paid them a lot of money and then didn't take their advice. Ultimately, they
Yeah.
were like, well, they don't understand that we're not a church, we're a family, and families don't need guidelines.
They never finish the sentence. We're not a church with a giant problem. We're a family with a giant problem. And they don't understand that. So we don't want any help.
And the workers would know
King-size
that
problem.
families don't have guidelines or boundaries or anything.
Right.
Well, I mean, most 2x2 families operate with a lot of guest culture, a lot of like not necessarily
that's true.
laying down what the rules are, but like,
Yep.
do you
Yep.
really want to be doing that when Jesus comes back? That was another one. But
yeah. Oh, that's a good
yeah,
one too.
yeah.
a lot of guest culture type of stuff.
Mhm.
This one kind of was something that kind of tied into to what we were talking about like a little while earlier, but it's like be on the inside looking in, not on the inside looking out, or you'll soon be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, it kind of
It's
goes
like-
back to the staying in the middle
The
idea.
mind
Be on the inside and only focusing on the inside, because if you are focusing on the outside, that's where you're going to go. It's like you have tunnel vision, and
Like a
so
moth
you
to a flame.
might as well just keep it on the inside, because if you start looking at the stuff in the world, so it's just like fear of what's out there.
The
Like if
fear
I look at the movie theater, I'll probably end up there, and then I'll end up in hell. That's the natural
I
progression.
mean, it turned out okay though. I didn't look at the movie theater. I just looked at the monitor that was showing me movies.
It was better.
Yeah.
I'm just
But
picturing
also-
a professing person just standing right in front of the screen, just like this far away from it. It's like they couldn't help themselves. They just went right.
Slippery slope.
Right.
But also, like, it also does this thing where it plays into the idea that everybody on the outside wishes that they were on the inside, that everybody on the outside of the truth really knows that the inside is the truth. Like, there's this idea that the people on the outside, if they've come in contact with it, they'll never forget that it was the right thing. They just aren't willing for it. And so that same thing, like if you end up on the outside, you'll be looking in. What if I'm on the outside looking out?
Well, look at, I mean, just the idea that you'd be on the outside looking in is pretty preposterous. Like, how many people leave and are like, oh, I wish I could go back to that, but I'm just stuck here on the outside.
That's what they say, though. That's what they think, though.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
The
that
idea is like,
no.
go ahead. Sorry, Abby.
No, it's just that people know that this is the right way, and that like there are a few people that we have heard. That
Yeah,
are, like,
every now and then people
but-
come back to it.
But yeah,
It's like
this
the
idea
prodigal
that people
son,
who leave
right?
still know that it's the best way.
Yeah, they preach the prodigal son. Like, look, he's out there eating with the pigs. Like, he's completely miserable.
Right.
And people who left meeting are getting STDs, doing drugs, alcoholics. They're miserable. Like, they just really wish they could come back, but they feel like they're too far gone.
But if they feel joy, it's false joy. So don't worry. That's kind of
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how they'd know what's going on the outside. They shouldn't be looking out there.
That's right. They're looking at it through a mirror. They like hold a mirror and then they look backwards. And they're getting
Ironically-
around the loophole.
Ironically, thanks to the leaked overseers meeting, we
Yeah.
now know that they're constantly looking at the X
Yeah.
community.
They know exactly what's going on. I think it sounds like,
That's a really good point.
yeah, they're
Bridget is on
looking at
the
this
side
mirror
looking
and they're
out.
like, yeah, they're like holding up a mirror, like, oh, I see an echo chamber.
Well, he's not actually listening to it. He's using ChatGPT as the mirror in this case. So
Right.
Yeah.
And it's on a monitor, it's not on a screen.
Yeah.
Well, you know, this kind of leads into, not to jump off yours too quickly, but there's
go for it.
one of my favorites is when people leave, they say they've left, but they can't leave it alone. It's similar vibe of like when people leave and speak back into it for some reason, they sort of pathologize that a little bit. Like there's something wrong with them. It's like either there's something wrong with them or they really just wish they were back in here. And like,
Yeah, they know. They know it's the truth.
it's like God is still speaking them, telling them that they should be back in. So they're really angry about it. Like there's this whole story we tell ourselves. And the reason I put that on my list is because I've said that. I actually said that about somebody one time. And I thought it was profound when I said it because I didn't know everybody said it all the time. But then you hear again, like in some of our experiences interacting with other ex-religious podcasts and things like that, they all say that.
Mhm.
They all have this thing about this whole story they tell about people who leave that really, really they actually want to come back in. Like if they left, there's these stories people tell about people who leave. If they left and they're happy, they're just full of sin and the devil has them. If they left and they're miserable, it's because they actually want to be back inside. There's a fill in the blank story you can make about
Right.
it.
Well, I was gonna say, like, apply that to like any other situation. Like, for instance, Elizabeth Smart, for instance, like she was abducted and whatever, and then she left that situation, got out of it, and now she can't shut up about it. So, like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. So there's things that need to be said about something, and you can't be silent and have the world be a better place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mom actually said this to me, was like, well, you don't want anything to do with this. So why are you doing any of this? You don't want anything to do with the church, this with the truth. So like, why are you involved at all? Like and I'd ask like, will you do this? No. But yeah, it's that idea, like, because people who leave have something to say about it because it's harmful. And those people are the threats to it because they know how it operates. Whereas much of the world think it's Norman Rockwell painting on the outside.
Yeah.
So
just
people
don't
who
know
leave
about it.
know what it operates like. They have been hurt, and they have a voice that they were not allowed to use inside, but now they can. So those people are scary. So they would rather they just leave it alone, just go away.
I mean, there's
turns out we
also,
didn't.
I mean, this is
We did for a
just
long
kind
time,
of jumping off of that thing is like, there's thousands of kids out there that still don't know what the name of their church is to the rest of the world. And they don't know that it was started by a guy named William Irvine. Like the most basic things that there is to know are still being withheld from a huge number of people.
And we know this, like, this isn't just our imaginations. We know this because we like people have reached out that are like, I didn't, and kids have reached out, which just to be clear, like we're very, very careful and simple communication. But a lot of like, I didn't know this was what it was called. I just searched some things and finally found something.
I searched my favorite worker, Ray Hoffman. And imagine
that'll get it.
Lyle Schultz. Yeah, no, there's definitely truth to there's truth to this. It's like growing up in your family of origin and you leave it, and whether it was a healthy, supportive, loving family or an abusive, destructive, harmful environment, you're going to be revisiting those memories and those things you learned throughout your life because that was your foundation. So you're going to be talking about your family of origin for the rest of your life, right? They shaped who you are. And when you're born and raised 2x2, it shapes who you are. It is the foundation of the person that you have become in many ways, whether you love it or whether you find it harmful. So obviously people who leave, most likely the latter. But of course, we're going to keep revisiting it and talking about it and deconstructing it. Because first of all, deconstruction, I'm starting to believe, is a lifelong thing that just happens in layers.
Yeah, totally.
And it's part of our identity. Like whether we like that or not, it is.
Yeah.
And you can't just like leave it and never think about it again. That's not real. That's not how that happens. Unless you're really hardcore repressing.
To leave it alone, actually, from what we've been hearing, is more harmful than actually talking about it. I mean, we've got people that are joining our group who like are finally finding Ex-2x2s after 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And they're like starting their whole deconstruction process all over again because they didn't realize how much baggage they still had.
Yeah. No, I have some personal friends who, when they knew that I had a group, logged in, looked around, and were like, that's too much. I don't want to deal with that. I don't even really want to talk about it. And over the last couple of years, the more we talk, the more they're like, I do want to talk about this. This is affecting me every single day. The prior to knowing there was an X community, they just didn't want to deal with it. Right. But now that they're realizing that there is an X community, then they'll kind of peek back in every once in a while. I'm like, okay, so the other day, for like an hour, I read through some stuff, and then they're like, okay, that's a thing. I got to think about that. That's affecting my life now. And it's like, then the deconstruction process just starts rolling and rolling. And I think that there's a lot. This is a little soapbox of mine. The whole bitter X thing. I think that I notice a lot when people leave, they'll write exit letters in an effort to smooth things over and say like, I'm leaving, but I don't feel badly toward anybody. We'll still be friends. Everything will be fine. I still believe in God a lot of times. And that's fine. Like, that's cool that people do that. But I think that the people inside have a story that they make up in their heads about the people who've left. And it's completely doesn't matter if it's even accurate at all. And I feel like, no, I'm not going to leave it alone. And I might be a bitter X. I'm just going to own all that stuff. There's no part of me that grants the people inside who are true believing and still staying inside, even with everything we know about them now. There's no part of me that grants them the legitimacy and the moral high ground for me to try to kowtow and make them try to be happy with who I am. If I'm a bitter X that talks too much about it and won't leave it alone, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's why that's why they get uncomfortable and they say, well, they left, but they can't leave it alone because they don't want to hear that it was harmful. They're trying to minimize the harm
protecting themselves
that the X community is speaking up about.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down
So
to.
with the exit letters and saying those kinds of things, like I'm not angry, whatever. I think there may be a part of that is about like trying to make sure that people aren't mad at them. But I think, like, for me, if I were to be saying that, I think like it would be more like, I know they're going to tell these stories and I have to say my piece so that if they tell those stories, they knew better and they're just lying. Like, I'm going to put it out there that like, I am not angry at a person. I'm not offended.
So I don't know how we're going to edit that one.
Just beep.
The whole thing.
I'm not angry. Beep.
Mike just turned around and started cussing. I don't know what that was about. That was weird.
But yeah, it, like saying that like this isn't why we left. This isn't why we left. We kind of did that. I mean, we sent.
We totally did. We softened the blow for everybody when we sent our like, it wasn't even, it was like our taking a break letter. It wasn't even an exit letter.
It was sort of softening the blow, but I think also it was like, say our piece so that if you're telling a different story, that's on you. But it's not because you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't even get this. Like,
you don't?
I mean, I get it, but
I
like,
know exactly what this is.
Okay, so I actually didn't hear this while I was in the church. It's really funny because I saw it on a list of gems and I was like, what in the world? But my good friend who used to be a worker was like, oh yeah, that was like, we said that all the time. But it like perfectly encapsulates everything. Like the vague worker sermons, the fact that they don't make rules. They don't have anything written down. Their sermons mean different things to everybody else in the tent. They don't have to say it out loud. If you feel it, that's better. So like, it's also you had a wrong spirit. It doesn't matter what you said. It matters what I felt. And like that whole, so Hayden actually asked me today, like, what does that mean? And I just described it like, well, if I tell you I love you, it's one thing, but if you feel that I love you, it's a whole different thing, right? That's kind of the gist of it anyway. But like,
for me, it's just giving like he who smelt it dealt it vibes.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Better smelt than telt. I don't even know.
I don't know.
But who came up with that?
But
Telt. Or felt than telt. Anyway, I thought it was silly and also
it sounds
so perfect.
It sounds like it would be in the Bible.
Sounds like a bun dropper.
It's so perfect gem. It's just perfect gem material. They made it rhyme. It's 4 letters long or 4 words long. Yeah. Anyway,
the funny thing is, like, there's so many ways that they actually live opposite to that.
Yes.
Like I spanked you because I loved you, or whatever. You know, that kind of. I have nothing matters but salvation.
Oh, now that's stuck in my head.
Yeah, now we're gonna have to belt that one out.
So yeah, also a hymn.
Should have saved that for him at the end.
Again, I don't know if this is actually biblical, but I do know it's a hymn, which is a funny thing in the 2x2s where like there's a lot of things I remember that now that I'm an Ex-2x2, I'm like, that's actually a hymn. I don't even know if that's in the Bible, even though I have read the whole Bible. I did read my Bible as a 2x2, but so much of what is preached is actually from the 2x2 hymn book. But nothing matters nothing matters but salvation is so dark, because what they literally mean by this is nothing in this life matters. This life doesn't matter. You're a stranger here. You're an alien here. You're just passing through here. You're living for the next life, for salvation. Everything you do should be with the focus of the next life and salvation. So what that equates to is you don't get joy in this life. You don't get hobbies or passions or pleasure, because that's for this life. And really nothing matters but salvation.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's also very dismissive, because you could have somebody say, I was abused and I'm having a hard time getting over it and I'm not ready to forgive, or whatever the 2x2s might want to hear. And their response could just be like, well, remember, nothing matters but salvation. It can dismiss literally anything you're struggling with.
I got told that a few times. Yeah.
Also, what does it mean? Nothing matters but salvation in this world or that to come.
Yeah, that line
It's
is
a way to
Yeah, that's a weird
justify
one.
all the rules, is what it is.
In
Like,
this world or that to come?
That is a weird
In
phrase.
this
I never
world
thought
or
about
the
that.
next one?
well, yeah,
This
the
world
I
that
guess
to
so.
come.
Do we
Yeah.
have a special
It says,
meeting in the
pray,
next world?
I have it on here. Pray for pardon and salvation, and it shall be as thou wilt. In Christ is no condemnation. Hide yourself in him from guilt.
Yeah.
Oh no.
We should do
Yeah,
a whole we should do a whole video just on hymns, I think.
Yeah, I mean that could be
Like our
tricky
favorite
because the
ones.
hymn book is really
Oh yeah, that's true.
very careful with their copyright from what I've heard.
Mm.
Like I know there's collectors online. I've looked on eBay and like YouTube where these collectors of other religion hymn books will like find rare hymn books, and the 2x2 one is considered difficult to get.
Right.
It's usually very expensive, and they will like not open it up and show it because the copyright's apparently pretty strict.
That's intense.
Well,
But like there are YouTube videos of them singing the entire hymn book. So
yeah.
That's true. That's
yeah,
true.
they're professing.
And I say we slap it up here and let YouTube deal it out. Deal with
Yeah,
it
yeah,
with fear and
He
trembling.
who smelt it dealt
rip
it.
it out with fear and troubling.
This copyright doesn't matter. Nothing matters with salvation.
We don't have to show the
Life is
hymn.
fleeting anyway.
It doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter
Isn't
at
this
all.
one of the
Don't care
hymns
about
that they
it.
use in like tested meetings
Shout out
as
to
well?
Megan.
I don't know if it's
Yeah,
one that they
yeah.
use to actually profess by.
Yes,
I'm not sure,
It
but
was
it's
used-
definitely
yes,
used
it
in those
was.
meetings.
I absolutely heard it as a test in tested meetings. Yep. In
So
this world
literally,
that to
like,
come. That is a weird phrase.
God gives you this invitation, come to me ere death draws nigh. You're singing this to 10-year-olds
Right.
Yeah.
to get them to commit their lives to
Right,
this
and
truth.
they probably just heard a story about how somebody was going to profess, but then they decided not to, and they went home and crashed their car.
And animals died somewhere in that story. And
Yeah, it's something about
Yep.
sheep.
And the
getting
rest of
stranded.
that verse is, when I clothe you with salvation, you shall live and shall not die.
Yeah. Yeah. Living
Awesome.
meaning living in God, right? And this was another
Right, but, like,
this leads
you're
into
talking
the
to
dying
10-year-olds.
to self
Right.
phrase. Like dying to self means you get life in salvation. So it's the same idea of
Right.
like, make sure this life isn't important and make sure you in your life are not important, because salvation and your soul are what matters.
All of this is true joy,
That's right.
and it's miserable.
Nothing
That was
matters but
actually-
salvation to extend to your family and your children and the abuse that you've suffered, and like nothing.
Yep.
But
And that's actually an
literally,
excuse for not doing anything about it.
yeah,
Is like,
It'll work itself out in the end. No big deal.
Mhm.
yeah. I listened to. Well, I actually talked about this on my latest Captive Reverne. Like, I remember distinctly. This isn't like an approximation. I remember workers when I was younger. Some of those older workers would tell crazy stories, more than later in life, but really dark stories about literally including like spousal abuse, where that somebody would go to a worker and be like, well, what matters is salvation. Just be forgiving, just pray about it, blah, 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 blah. Nothing matters but salvation is a perfect way to never deal with anything.
Mhm.
Just never take any responsibility at all. They'll have all of the authority. The workers love having all of the authority and none of the responsibility, because none of it matters anyway.
Yes,
It's
what I
all
was
about
saying earlier is
salvation.
it's used to dismiss
Yeah,
pretty much whatever they don't want to hear about.
so much joy.
Yeah. Ah, the joy, overwhelming.
joy is sadness,
Joy-
interwoven.
There's a hymn about that too.
Joy and sorrow. And
Love and joy and sadness interwoven, love in all I see, something like that.
Yeah, joy and sorrow, I think.
Sorrow, yeah.
Joy and sorrow. Yes. It's not just sadness,
Yeah.
it's true sorrow.
This isn't what we're talking about, but it's sort of an under-discussed part of 2x2 life, where some random thing would happen and then everyone would talk about it in their testimonies for months because it was something new. You know?
Yeah,
Some
I mean,
random thing.
that's a really good point. The repetition in testimony and prayer is kind of crazy if you think
Yeah.
about it. Like I was on a rotation of testimonies that wasn't that big. Like, I mean, it might be different verses, but the overall, like, I just want to do blank better in whatever in the coming days. Like, that was the same over and over.
Well, that was part of what I would now consider early deconstruction for me was realizing that like it just wasn't, there was just nothing there. I kind of wanted to like deepen and broaden what I thought about the Bible, just learn more about it, I guess. And now looking back, that was probably the first few items on the shelf. But at the time, I was just like, I'm not getting anything out of the sower and the seed over and over, you know.
Are you saying learning more about the Bible actually put cracks in your faith, in your meeting
That's
faith?
correct.
Shocking.
Let that be a lesson to y'all.
That's right. Just read the study list.
In the coming days.
In the coming days. What does that mean?
You can just put that on the end of
that was,
you know how when we were little, not little, but when we were young, we thought it was hilarious to finish everything with in bed. You remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
I
Like
don't remember that.
fortunes,
Yeah,
like
no, totally.
fortune cookies or like whatever, just in bed. It was hilarious. Well, this is the 2x2 version,
Yeah.
but it's not funny.
It's sort of like when you need
Funny now.
a little bit more for your word count in your essay, you know?
Yeah, it's fluff. Just stretch. You start out with like, oh, I'm just happy to be here. I don't have much to add. And you end with in this coming days. Then you just need like 2 sentences in the middle. You're fine. It's a full thing.
Genuinely, that's what most testimonies were.
And I mean, that's what it means. At least for the next 7 days, that's what we could do until I come up with another testimony the next Sunday,
Right.
and then that one will be, you know, for the coming days, the coming 7 days.
Yeah.
Your testimony only gets you like what, 3 days, 3.5 days.
Depending on whether the workers are in town or not.
Oh.
Yeah.
This was an especially popular one at convention because you're talking about the whole next year.
Right.
So-
Right. In the coming weeks
Yep.
and months and year.
Yeah,
you can
except
sort
they
of
might
right-size
even change
your
it to in the
testimony.
coming year.
Ooh,
Yeah.
a variation. It's a
And then
fun
maybe
one.
they'd talk about that in our testimonies.
Yeah, I think this one just like it's one of those phrases that when you hear it over and over again without even realizing it, it's sort of driving the point home in your brain that this is for life. Like you're doing this
Good
forever.
point. Yeah.
It emphasizes that you're in this forever and you don't plan on stopping, and this is
And
what
you'll
your
never-
future is,
Yeah.
right?
And you'll never hit the goal. You will
Right.
always be trying
You're
to get better. In the
Always
coming days.
striving for it. Yeah.
Right.
You're never going to be good enough to not say that.
Yeah, it
phrase.
was never like, I'm just thankful that like I'm here and
I nailed it.
I'm good. Like I am set.
I want to do
I
the
made
same
it.
thing in the coming days as I did last week. Is still not
Yeah.
good.
It went pretty good. You can kind of just do whatever I did before. Copy and
Yeah.
paste, really.
I'm not perfect
Yeah.
yet, so
Right.
gotta try another
Yeah.
week.
That's so true. It's something that like it's never okay to be like doing okay. It's
Yeah,
only
did you
okay
Yeah.
to be not
What,
okay.
what kind of testimony would that be? Like,
I
man,
did
I just had a
okay.
really good week. Like, I'm good.
I did
Bring
all
it on.
right.
Yeah.
It would be something. That would be false peace.
That's right.
Yeah.
You could never get up and say like, "Well, I wasn't perfect this week, but I did pretty good." Yeah.
It is weird. The asymmetry of being able to describe that you haven't done well, but not being able to describe when you did is interesting, right? Just psychologically, having an entire culture run on that principle of there's no definition around success.
Yeah.
That's
totally.
interesting.
yet-
I don't.
And yet you're supposed to also be the happiest people on the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like
Like-
I say, true joy is miserable. So
If there was positivity in your testimony, it was usually like, this thing happened at work or school, and it reminded me of this story in the Bible, and that made me like really thankful that everything reminds me of the Bible
yeah,
when I
right.
need a testimony. Like that was pretty much
It was really
as
encouraging.
good as you could be.
Yeah. It was never like if it was a job, like you'd just be constantly missing your target like
Performance
every
eval.
single week. It's like, oh yeah, I'm
really
gonna,
don't
I'm gonna
deserve
be,
that
I want to be
raise.
more humble this week. The next week comes, like, well, I have nothing to report. I didn't do it at all.
There's an exception to this. The exception is the ministry.
Yeah.
Because the ministry gets up at convention, especially the older brother workers, and they get up and they sing the praises of the ministry themselves the entire time and how they are doing God's work on earth. And like they had a really good year in their field and this and that. Like they're allowed to tout their wins Oh, hey, we had a lot of interest in that area. It was
That's a
good.
win.
We have our letter that came out today. That's like we have a little. This is gross, but I'm quoting Lyle. We have a Chinese couple that's coming. Their names are this and this, and I think they're understanding it. Like that's anyway.
Yeah, this was mine. I don't actually have that much to say about it. It's just like a little thing that they always are always talking about. They don't talk about like conversion or
not by that name.
Not by that term, but it's always like, oh yeah, we've got somebody who's interested in the meetings, or
we have a little interest,
and like it can just be like one person that maybe showed up randomly at gospel meeting one day because they saw the flyer on the billboard in the community or something. And
that's so true. It's not even like we had 3 people profess. It's like we had somebody come and listen to one meeting, so now we can preach about the interest.
Right. And they can write
makes
their
it
letters.
Sound like it makes it sound like God's gospel is prospering in that area, and in reality, it's like one old guy stumbled in and had no idea what they were talking about. He thought it was an English class,
Yeah,
that's how it was advertised.
Yeah, it is weird.
This Herder's English class
in China,
but he's Irish. So
this is another thing that I think is interesting, is the sort of euphemistic way they have about talking about even what they're doing, to the point that I was in adulthood before I really kind of put together that they weren't doing anything, in the sense that nobody's getting converted. Several workers I've talked to, ex-workers I've talked to, said that actually bothered them. They got into adulthood and went into the work before they realized that workers don't actually convert anybody. Very few. Very, very few, vanishingly few people.
Yeah.
And like, well, we have some interest. That doesn't mean anything. There's been a lot of interest. It's people, like you're saying, wander in once or twice, and then they're like, oh, this is weird and culty, and they leave. And it's like, I didn't really think about it until I had talked to a few ex-workers that I was close to, where they said how bothered they were by the fact that they weren't even really preaching anything. They are not preaching. They weren't spreading the gospel per se. Mm-hmm. They weren't actually doing anything. Right. And so these little, like, oh, we have some interest. There's these little euphemistic ways of kind of telling the story, this kind of like flowery way of saying nothing. Nothing's happening. Nobody's coming. No outside people are coming to the meetings. Nobody's professing. That's just not happening almost anywhere.
No. And like, yeah, but they do get a few people profess, in a very large region. There probably is like a few, and that they ride that high as if they converted a stadium full of people.
A few every several years.
Yeah.
Like it's not even.
I was shocked.
While they're losing like thousands out the back door.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's like I also have interest in a car crash that I drive by. I'm not interested in being involved, but I'm interested in it.
These reporters are showing a lot of interest.
Those FBI agents, they're so interested these days.
It makes me
I was shocked
it makes me wonder just how much their letters are fabricated. I should have been on the list here. It makes me wonder just how much the letters are sort of just like fantasy. Like Lyle's letter today talking about this couple, like are the couple really that interested? Did they really not understand the other services that they went to, which is a gross thing to me for him to say. But did they really tell another one of the friends that this was like, they loved it more than anything? Like there's no way to know if any of that's true, but now everybody knows their names.
Yeah.
But who knows how much that's being embellished? Probably a lot, because it's like the only hope is that this would happen for them.
It's the only interesting thing that's happened.
They better never leave, because everybody knows their names now. Yeah, I was shocked when we left meetings, and I think for a while Kyle was calling into this church, and I listened a couple times with him. It was like online or a podcast or something.
Which one you're talking about?
I think it was that one near Seattle. But anyway, one week they mentioned how many baptisms they had that week, and there were like a couple hundred or something people had joined their church and been baptized. And I was just like, what? Like the idea of that happening. And can you imagine going to convention and like even 10-20% are added to the number at convention that year or something? That would be just that insane. Like unheard
Well,
of.
no,
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say a lot of churches track this stuff and keep it as metrics to figure out if what they're doing is successful or not. So like the LDS faith, we went on Mormon Stories and we're talking to them. The average, they keep track of how many they baptized, not just generally our interest in showing interest in the church, are baptized and logged into the church. Their names go onto the rolls and everything. And they have they've uncovered some unscrupulous ways that they've been doing that. But on average, when people go out, spend 2 years in their ministry, they generally convert some people. And some people convert double digits every month. And when I was first learning about that, I was like, I bet you most workers, I'm just going to broad brush here. I would say most workers haven't converted double digit people in their lifetime.
Yeah,
I don't think that's
because some
far-fetched.
workers do keep track of that.
Yeah.
They must.
Yeah, especially like the older brother workers.
But you got to like take out the kids from that equation.
I don't count that. Yeah, no, I don't count that.
So like
those are
if
people,
it's just adults coming in, it's got to be such a low number.
But the 2x2s,
people overseas have an advantage.
The 2x2s would view less people being converted as like persecution, which is just proof that they're correct, right? So it doesn't even matter to them if they're actually exactly. It doesn't matter to them if they're converting people or not, because the way is narrow. This just proves
it. Proves it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah.
The way is.
This was all. But
people are willing. It also ties into the other thing where people on the outside know that it's right. They know it, but it's just so narrow that they're not willing for it. And it's one of the things that bugs me so bad about the truth is that there's always this idea that the rest of the world defers to them naturally. Like if 2x2 family is with non-2x2 family, typically 2x2 family gives thanks. Like in my experience, like there's always this deference to the 2x2s, and it gives them this idea. Well, they create that first of all because they just like expect it. But it gives them this idea that everybody actually knows that they're right. Everybody really kind of innately just kind of knows they can see the spirit, but they're just not willing for it.
This is also preached frequently to 2x2s to free. It's the you always have one foot on the edge of hell thing. Like the way is narrow. You just because you're here at meeting doesn't mean you have a guaranteed pass into heaven. Like you got to be really, really careful. You might be on the edge of the fold. It's that whole thing. It's held over 2x2 heads constantly too.
Yeah. It turns out that the path to salvation is essentially a tightrope in 2x2 terms.
Yeah. And there's always, we've talked about this already, so I won't go crazy with it, but there's this constant, like the magnetism away from the center of the fold. Apparently faith and the power of God are no match for just the average thing in the world. You're constantly warned to not even look at things like don't go to a movie theater. Don't this, that, or the other thing. Don't listen to radios.
Your own self, your own humanity.
Yeah. You're turned against, right down to your own, like the sin is, wicked all the time. The flesh is wicked all the time and all this stuff. Even our hearts can turn against us. And it's like, you're just constantly, the way is so narrow that it doesn't include basically anything on earth. And you're scared of yourself at some point because it's like anything that could happen can turn into a stumbling block. Yeah. What a weird way to live,
Yeah, that's the thing. It almost like the more dedicated you become, the more narrow it becomes. Because you're going to constantly seek, like you're going to notice, like this is a thing. You're constantly going to be self-correcting and like trying to improve the way that you're living your life to make it more streamlined towards salvation. And it's just not a realistic thing.
Well, we see that happening in the 2x2s right now as people who have questioned and tried to push for change are basically ignored by the ministry and they're leaving. The people who are left is just becoming more extreme. More and more
Yeah.
shame. More and more
This
narrow.
probably isn't as funny as it was, because this popped into my head when you said that the way is that in the truth is actually a tightrope. Have you ever seen like that show where there's a wall coming at you and you have to make the shape?
Yeah.
It's like a
Turns
Japanese
out-
game show or something.
It turns out that the way is dress and bun shaped, and like you have to be holding your Bible
Pioneer
and your
skirts.
hymns old and new. And if you've gone to a theater, then there's something stuck on you that doesn't let you get in. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just an image that popped into my head that was funnier probably
No,
in my
that's
head.
really
I
funny.
think it's
No,
No,
that's
I get
funny.
it. It's fine.
It's been
We need to
now,
make the wall. It's called the wall.
it's
I
called
think.
the wall. Yeah.
And we need to make an image of the wall that is
With a bun.
2x2 shaped.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Yeah. I have one left. Who all? Does
I have a
anyone have
couple,
two
but
left?
yeah, I got.
There's a
Your
few
turn
more
then.
here. What?
Can try it.
Those with the.
I narrowed mine down to 5, but
Oh, that's holy. You narrowed it down. Doing good.
narrow. The way is narrow.
Your list must decrease and your bun must increase.
Or you'll never get
Here,
through the
we'll
wall.
do this one. This is Kyle. Yeah, Kyle.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Love this.
Yeah,
Classic.
I like this one. Love the sinner, hate the sin. I love when they give themselves credit for loving you while being a jerk. So
Yes.
I love you, but I hate everything about you, but I still get credit for love. I'm still the good one
Right.
here. You're the bad
You
one.
need
I've
to
labeled
change.
you a sinner. I still get credit, and I hate everything about you.
I most often
it's so convenient.
I most often heard this applied to the LGBTQ community. I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the time.
Well, I think there's a lot of society that applies this to the LGBTQ
Yeah.
community. Certainly
Yeah.
not just a 2x2 thing, but
No.
that's definitely where it's applied the most. What you were saying, like it's an excuse for people to essentially hate you, but say they love you. It was kind of the same thing with physical punishment. Like
Mhm.
they get to say, "I'm doing this because I love you," and so the end. Like, what can you say to that?
Right. Yeah. It's you
It's
who
kind of the
needs
same
to
vibe.
change, though. Clearly. Yeah.
Well, it's godly love, right? And there's the qualifier again. Well, this is godly love. No one anywhere on earth would confuse this with love, but if I say godly, now it's the best kind of love. It's like
In
that's
fact,
convenient.
If you're applying it to the LGBTQ community, you are literally condemning somebody for loving
Yeah.
for who they
Right,
love.
right.
Right.
And it's not godly love.
It's not godly love. Yeah.
Right.
So your
Yeah.
love for them is superior because your love is the godly love. Their love is sin.
And it is an interesting way of trying to parse out, and this is common everywhere. And this is not something to go into too deeply, but parsing out who you are with what you do, and saying like the thing that you're doing, I hate that thing, so you shouldn't do it. It's a weird thing to do to somebody to say like, hey, this thing that you would say is part of you,
Right.
I'm saying it's not. I'm saying that's just something you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like there's built into a lot of we'll say 2x2 beliefs and maybe other beliefs that are similar is just a complete void of empathy. No ability whatsoever to identify with the experience of somebody else, their lived embodied experience. They do using phrases like this allows them in their own mind to separate you from your activities and never have to marry those two concepts up, never have to like relate to the person in a way to understand why would they do that, you know.
That's an integral 2x2 like tenet though.
Yeah.
Is not being able in the world but not of the world. It's integral. Like you can't totally understand anybody else's experience because this is who you are and this is your experience, and you don't want to understand it because if you understand, that's going to move you to the edge of the flock, right? You're going to be looking out trying to understand people.
Yeah. As a 2x2, you're not allowed to have your own identity. So if someone says being queer is part of my identity, it's part of who I am, well, that right there is a problem for the 2x2s because you can't have even a hobby that you get too passionate about, because if something becomes how you define yourself or part of your identity or part of how you see yourself, it could be dangerous. It could separate you from God. And obviously having a queer identity is part of that. So they separate it out as a behavior instead, and then it's easy to condemn. But even having an identity as a 2x2s. Yeah, I was just summing up, like having your own identity as a 2x2 that isn't God is my identity is bad.
Yeah, it's just like you can be gay, but you can't do gay. Like you can, I guess, have the feelings, although people are still going to look down on you if they know it. But if you act on those, that's when you are either excommunicated or you're not allowed to take part. Even though, like, there are lots and lots and lots of other things that people have decided that are sins that haven't excluded people from taking part. But
yeah, that's a whole separate topic. But I think 2x2s negotiate with biblical text all the time, but it always benefits them and how they are currently. It doesn't. They never negotiate with the text in a way that shows that they need to make any improvements at all. It's just like that. And it is really funny too, especially in this case. And as we're talking about like LGBTQ stuff, the fact that they would equate the things you're doing not with who you are is a weird thing for people in straight relationships to comment on. To separate your own marriage from the concept of loving the person is more of an indictment of you than it is of them. Just leave that there.
Yes.
So
completely.
To keep, we've been kind of going for a while. So to move it on just a little bit, tangential to this is the way is perfect, but the people aren't. This is sort of the inverse. So they love the sin or hate the sin as a way of as disconnecting yourself from the other person. The way is perfect, but the people aren't is a way of justifying your own bad activity, because that's not the point. The point isn't what I'm doing. The point is that I'm in the right way. It's a fun little like subtle sleight of hand to sort of get away with stuff, honestly.
Protects the system.
Yeah. Well, and it like it's used to, forgive watching TV all the way to pedophilia, and CSA.
That's what it's mostly used for, is the worst stuff, actually.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the way is perfect, but people aren't, and then hate the sinner or love the sinner, hate the sin are kind of like opposite. Are they not?
That's why they're used to describe opposite people. One's used to dismiss people who are on the outside, and one is used to not avoid dismissing anybody on the inside. It's all very
the system.
Totally.
The system particularly.
Yeah.
That's why nobody can change the system now, even though it's proving that most of the people in there actually, like, the system is built by people, and it's not proving to be
interesting.
True,
like, what would be the breaking point? And I mean, like, obviously there's a lot of people that have realized that
this might be a whole other video too.
There's a lot of people that have realized that the way is not actually perfect, but there's still the most members of the ministry, especially senior leadership in the ministry, I believe they're fully convinced that it is perfect. Like, what would it take to convince them that it's not? Like,
nothing, because it's perfect. Nothing.
I don't think there's any way to like make that synapse form in their mind.
It breaks immediately.
Yeah, and a lot of people have tried. Like a professing person recently was having a conversation. I heard this secondhand. A professing person and an unprofessing person had this conversation recently, and the person who had left had said, "Why is it perfect? Why is the way perfect? What is the way?" And the person said, "Well, it's Jesus. Jesus is the way." And they're like, "Okay, what does that have to do with meetings?" Well, Jesus set up meetings in the home and sent his disciples 2x2, and the person who left was like, "Jesus did not set up the meetings in the homes. That was Paul. Didn't matter, because it's like, even that's just the Bible. That's beyond the outside of the fact of like whether you believe the Bible is literally true. It's just 2x2s have their own particular reading in the story that they've read into the Bible at this point.
Their own narrative.
And and it's actually been interesting post Brewergate to watch people leave who are believing, speaking back into it, like, hey, wait a second, the Bible doesn't actually say this. Doesn't matter.
Well, also, like you were saying earlier, if they had been using the Bible to deal with this crisis, or if we've been using the Bible all along as your only self-help book or whatever we were talking about then why did this abuse crisis happen in the first place? And now we only need the Bible and prayer to correct the abuse crisis. It's the same way with the way is perfect. It's like, if the way is perfect and you believe in a perfect God and Jesus, wouldn't it be self-correcting? Like, wouldn't it be self-correcting for the people not being perfect? But it's not. You have all of these issues and these problems that are just festering, and they're not going away, and they're not getting fixed by relying and trusting on the perfect way like you've been doing all along. These problems ended up there based on you already doing that. It's circular. It's like,
well,
Yeah.
if up until now, people have seen the way as perfect. They've seen the way as this just like perfectly coordinating group of ministers that are all, each individually led by the Spirit. And they haven't realized that there's a very distinct hierarchy, and the overseer actually makes all of the decisions and can veto the entire rest of the staff if they want. And if the overseer actually wants to make good decisions, we're learning that the entire rest of the staff can say hell no. And so like there is no like group of people all being individually led. The workers are not individually led.
yeah. And
Like,
that's in that
they
linked
can't be.
overseer meeting. Again, they said,
Yeah.
of course we have a hierarchy. There's hierarchy in the Bible. Jesus
Yeah.
established hierarchy in heaven.
Right.
They will freely admit to it when they're talking amongst themselves.
They have moved the goalpost quite a bit in the last 2 years. It's interesting. It's
Very
interesting to see some subtle little nudges, even talking about history and even all this other stuff. A lot of the things that we just unquestionably understood, now we're like, well, we didn't say that, you know, and it kind
Or
of gets
they-
back to like the way is perfect. The part that we don't write down anywhere, that's perfect.
Right.
Yeah. Or they've moved all the way to we've all understood that this was, you know, that a couple hundred years ago, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like not even a couple hundred,
No,
but
yeah.
like there was a letter recently that said that like
Yeah.
we understand that we all understand this. Like here's the baseline. Like no, that was never the baseline.
Yeah, that was
Like,
not true. Not true at
we
all.
just made a new baseline and we just pretended that like we all understand that now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're taking a long time here.
I
Who's
I'm
gonna want
through
to
my
watch
list.
this all the way through?
Yeah.
If you watch
Yeah,
it
if
all
you're
the way
still
through,
with
at
us,
least to, like give me a signal.
bless you.
Like put in the comments.
Made it
What?
to an hour 40.
Yeah, how long you made it to.
My last one is the acronym JOY,
Oh yeah.
which is Jesus first, others second, yourself last. I heard this so much, and it's basically, I mean, we've already pretty much covered it with like being small and all that stuff, but this one was always one that was sticky for my brain
Yeah.
because first of all, it's
Yeah.
catchy, right? It's an acronym.
It's a great bumper
Acronyms
sticker.
are always, yeah. But they
bump
really
bumper.
do mean yourself last and everything. That's the most important point of this acronym isn't Jesus first and others second. The most important point is yourself is last. As in no self, don't have self. Like we've thoroughly covered that. Don't have identity, make yourself
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
this
That's
one's
how
employing-
it's preached.
This one's employing a lot of therapists right now.
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
and I
for
don't think
sure.
others second even plays into it. I think it just sounds good because
Right.
Yeah.
because
just 'cause
others
it
aren't
fits,
even
yeah.
supposed to be part of the equation. Like nothing matters but salvation, right? So like Jesus is first, and then all of the other stuff is just crap. Like it literally doesn't matter. So I don't even know why they have the O and the Y.
I think the other second might just
Okay.
be don't be a stumbling block. I think that's all part of that conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
To me, the why was the most important, like hammered home point whenever I heard
Totally.
it preached.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Like it's the rest of them are last.
because you
So
can't
Jesus
you
first
can't
and
do
then
the others
others
if
and
you
yourself.
haven't done the last one already.
Well, how about Jesus first and then others and yourself last?
Right.
Other stuff.
Anyway, I think
last.
we've pretty much covered that.
Um,
Just be hard on yourself all the time is the gist.
That your conscience will become seared. Is that being hard on yourself all the time?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Whose was that?
whose was that? No, that was Kari's.
I think that was one I cut out because it kind of is along the same lines as some of the
Yeah.
other ones I had. But
I mean,
Scrupulosity.
Leave it alone. Yeah.
yeah, basically, and it's the same too as another one that I had on my backup list, which was if you say no to God enough, eventually He'll listen to you. It's the same idea of like you can sin enough or just step out of line or be on the edge of the fold enough that eventually you sear your conscience and God completely stops talking to you. And then
Right.
you have no frame of reference for morals at all. It's totally gone and you're a
Right.
lost cause
yeah,
and
you're just
you are going to hell.
floating in the ether at that
It's
point.
weird though
Yeah.
because
You're
the other
untethered.
idea that they say is that if you like if you know the truth and then you leave, that you'll always know that it's the truth, and that like it'll be worse for you than if you hadn't ever known it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
it's just just Mad Libs, like whatever they want to use at the time is what it is. It's like whichever one works for me right now. Whichever one sounds most scary in this context.
Yeah. How my brain always heard it was really what it comes down to is you're allowed a limited number of mistakes.
Yeah.
Which is a terrifying thought because you don't exactly know how many,
Yeah.
but eventually God's just going to give up on you.
Yeah. I love the I'm glad that I love the implied moral authority of, if you get too far away from what I'm doing, you're going to have a messed up conscience.
I'm writing this down for my therapist.
As they have an FBI investigation. I mean, which one of us is blowing off CSA survivors? Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Was Dean's conscience seared?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Or was the conscience seared of 1,000 people that showed up at his funeral?
Right.
I mean,
I would love to know to this day. I mean, I know that there's certainly a number of people who are like, just mortified that they, attended that funeral. But there's also just a ton more that are like I don't know what they're telling themselves that to justify that.
They didn't know.
Well, there were some people there that did know. I don't know how many, but a non-zero number. Yeah. But so this actually sort of reminds me. Sorry, I wasn't going to bring this one up, but I'm going to now because we're talking about it. It goes along the lines of the whole, people who leave, this stuff happens to them. Their consciences are seared. They get in car accidents and all the other stuff.
Get cancer.
One of my least favorite things: don't put a question mark where God puts a period. That is wild that they would speak for God in a way that if something bad happens to somebody, that's because God did that to them.
Right.
It's wild. Like
don't ask why
that gets used in such dark ways. The way that the 2x2s talk about death is so unhealthy. And when this whole like don't put a question mark where God puts a period is always brought up in the cases of like, hey, this person left, what's going on? Or if somebody leaves and then passes away tragically in some way, they have stories about that to scare you in meeting. It's crazy. That's an extremely abusive thing to do to people, especially with kids in the room. And saying that God puts a period on things is one of the darkest things that they do, I think.
It's also saying don't question. Like, don't question why a merciful, loving God would do that.
Yeah. The idea that
a young child dies around convention time, and this is everybody is just like drooling for this type of testimony.
Yeah, this whole narrative they have around, if you leave, your conscience could be seared, you could forget God, you lose your peace or whatever. It's worse for you than for somebody who never knew, and God might put a period on your life. That's really dark stuff. When you put that all together, that's death cult stuff. I'm sorry. Like, that's how people talk. If you heard somebody else talking like that, you would think they were a cult. You would think they were crazy. And I think that's like, I don't like using the word cult for a lot of stuff, but like, because it's a very emotionally loaded term. But when you put those narratives together and you start telling rooms with 8-year-olds in them that on Friday night, thinking that maybe they'll profess, it's like, you're scaring little kids and people. I mean, you're scaring adults too. We all have, we're all human. It's terrifying. It's terrifying to do that and treat people like that. I don't think that's okay. It's one of the things where a lot of this stuff I kind of laugh about it and I blow it off and I think it's all silly. Some of the stuff we're talking about is really psychologically damaging. And like I say, employing therapists now increasingly all the time.
The stuff that they preach about in front of 8-year-olds, looking back, like makes me so angry. Like I have legit, like I have dealt with for many, many years, like sensitivity to animals, and to hear like from the platform so many times about this little lamb who just willingly laid his own head on the chopping block. And he knew, like it's all made up, like the way that they fantasize about it too. They fetishize it, honestly. But like for the little kids in that room. And then some of the sermons that we've heard in the last couple of summers from the platform about topics that would require trigger warnings.
Mhm.
Not okay. Not at all okay. I don't remember when I just said this before, but one of our kids went to a meeting one time when we were on vacation, and they were how old?
Like 6 or 7.
Like 6 or 7. And the takeaway was, Mommy, I never want to go there again. That was really creepy. The only thing they talked about was death and dying and how we were no better than dirt.
Isn't it crazy that and we as little children were so exposed to that so constantly that it was normalized for us.
It was completely
that's
normal.
that's the appropriate response for
right,
a kid
right.
to be creeped out.
It's godly joy.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you guys
We
have
should end on a funny one.
I have servants and handmaidens. Do you want to? So the other
world over is probably important.
The other, that is, yeah. So we've got 4 that we haven't hit yet.
The top one is pretty classic. That one's
Don't doubt your faith, doubt your doubts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one. All the churches use that one.
That's a good one.
too.
Don't doubt your faith, doubt your doubts.
Yeah, LDS does that as well.
Again, don't ask questions. Just
don't think
question.
at all. Just don't think.
What
think critically, but only if it's to prove like the stuff you already think. Just like Richard Denherter transcribing those meetings, not so that they could actually think critically about them, not so that they could actually address the concerns, but just so that they could like reaffirm that the people are wrong. Not really have reasons for it, but just laugh at them.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good one.
I mean, that's just a classic high control / cult.
It's literally don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, don't think and doubt the fact that you would think. Doubt the fact that your brain wants to think some more.
Yeah.
It's a warning sign if your brain is questioning.
Yeah, let that be a warning. Thinking is bad.
Here's the next one. If you don't make it to meeting, you won't make it.
My God.
But also like
just
the core tenet of the 2x2 church is going to meeting. Like that's the way. And so if you can't do that, then
you're still not guaranteed, but at least you have a chance if you're at meeting.
You're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, nothing says faith like if you don't show up, you might lose it. It's such a weird. It's such a weird thing to look back now on how often they talked about faith, but were terrified that their faith would leave them. Which
that's a Kyle
means
Gem.
they didn't have faith.
I was just gonna say, that's a bun dropper.
Yeah, it's a pixie dropper or something. Can't be a bun dropper. A bangs dropper.
Pink hair pixie cut.
And then
earring dropper.
Of course, this one, the same the world over. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yes and no, right?
This one might be confusing if you didn't grow up hearing it. Do you think people know what that means?
Yeah. So the idea is that like you can travel anywhere in the world and you can just walk into somebody's house, which is really weird anyway. Hopefully you get the right one because there's lots of times that we haven't.
Hopefully you're not a pedophile.
Yeah.
It's the unity.
You can just walk into somebody's house and the spirit is the same. Right. That's kind of what they're saying. Although, like, it's been pointed out many, many, many times, this is not the same. Guess what? We have grape juice in the U.S. and Canada. We have wine out of the boat. Apparently, we're the only ones with alcoholics.
Australia's allowed Christmas trees and the U.S. is not.
Yeah. And in like different countries, they don't necessarily wear dresses. Actually, there are some. It's usually kept really hush hush. Like we don't really hear much about that because then we would maybe it would be a stumbling block, right? So, but like it's true, and they like their
divorce and remarriage.
Different.
Divorce and remarriage, yeah, like
it's the big one.
The workers stay in batches.
Oh yeah.
The workers stay in apartments.
Right.
We don't call them apartments because that starts to sound like maybe everybody could.
Maybe they're just
a residence.
Living together.
You have an address. Oh no.
Yeah. This one worked so much better before the internet.
Yes. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, because people just believed it. I mean, I believed it growing up. I thought. Yeah.
Meanwhile, we weren't the same the country over.
Divide.
I mean, they mentioned divorce and remarriage.
Yeah.
Like there was. So, yeah. I mean, people. I could be wrong.
We need to give
but,
context to people who don't know what this means, what this is.
Oh, well, divorce and remarriage. Like,
well, no, but like
on the
East,
west coast, they allow, they don't allow,
of the US.
They don't allow people to participate if they've been divorced and remarried. Divorced and remarried over on the East Coast, they sometimes allow it. Like
Mostly.
It's with an asterisk a lot.
Yeah, there's always like
they don't see what the big deal is.
But like there's people that have moved from the West Coast to the East Coast thinking it was going to be the same, and then they end up having to meet together in meeting with somebody who's divorced and remarried, and they're like, "Oh, who's this heathen? But these are supposed to be the same people as me, but they're not." Oh.
And they have moved back to the West Coast.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is that way you can still justify this phrase. It is the same the world over, but those guys are confused. They don't actually have it. So the ones who have it are united in the same the world over and think like me and believe like I do, and everybody else is wrong and they don't actually have it. So the unity is still there.
Yeah, and also you can just say it's the same spirit the world over, because that's what they always say is, oh, I went to meeting and it was the same spirit. Well, yeah, because you walk in, you sit in silence in a room of people you've never met before. You sit in a circle and don't make any sounds for 15 minutes, and then you follow the same format. It's a religious experience.
Yeah, so I mean, from that perspective, it is the same. Like you have the same format.
You might stand in some places and sit in others.
Yeah, I mean, if you can go into somebody else's house where they also have eliminated all sensory input, it feels very similar.
Yeah, right. You have a ticking clock. That's the only.
Yeah, it's the only one. They got those clocks the world over.
Just booming like anxiety in your head about where you're supposed to put your eyeballs. Clocks. Yeah. Well, so there's something I want to mention about the spirit. What?
It's in every meeting home, the ticking clock.
Is something you want to mention about the spirit?
Yes.
As an atheist?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Can't wait.
So,
buckle up, Christians.
The same the world over. The spirit is so. I wanted to mention this earlier, and I can't remember when it was, but the spirit is so flighty. You were saying something about basically the utter powerlessness, like the dainty nature of it when it's supposed to be God-led. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I have been told that yes, the other people in your meeting not being quite right can actually keep the spirit from being in that meeting for yourself. Mm-hmm. Like some other people in your meeting can scare off the spirit. Yes. It's like a dove, right? Like the spirit is like a dove, and you have to be
they would say that
more like a feral cat.
Yeah.
And so that like we have actually been told this about people that we know that like the other people in our meeting they can ruin this meeting, take it away from me.
What's that verse in the Bible they would use to justify this? Like a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. It's that idea of like if one person walks in with the wrong spirit, it's gonna just destroy the whole piece of the whole meeting.
I hope nobody's saying that now post Dean Brewer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just gonna say, like, why didn't everybody notice that the spirit was gone?
Nobody noticed.
Time he walked into the room.
Yeah, well, if he should have had a bun but didn't have one, maybe they would have noticed.
If he was playing around with makeup, that if he were a woman who wasn't wearing a bun.
Yeah,
they always notice with the women, right? The skirt's a little too short, but with the guys.
Has a man, a 2x2 man, ever been approached in public and been like, "What church do you go to? Like you clearly are something."
Or approached by the workers and said, "Your spirit's a little off because your skirt is too short."
Yeah.
Because they have a beard or something. Well, that's okay
a
now.
Beard
that's okay.
A beard or long hair might be the
long hair would do it.
Long hair would, or a tattoo.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
The whole idea, for some reason, the one in my head is the image of like a group of kids on a ferry. Because I'm pretty sure that's this one sermon that I heard specifically. It was a group of professing kids on a ferry, and somebody like people just approached them and like, "What church do you guys belong to?" And they noticed them by their spirit. They noticed them because there was a bunch of 17-year-olds wearing floor-length jean skirts and their hair up in a bun with no makeup, and who were trying very hard to be little. That's
where there's the classic story that you hear all the time of the worker's going to pick up a sister worker from the airport that they've never met. She's flying in from a foreign country. They've never met her. And as soon as she walks out, they out of security, they're like, that we recognized our sister right away. We could tell by the spirit.
And they all eat it up.
Yeah.
Nobody in that audience goes, well, yeah.
It's crazy.
Really
because don't doubt your doubts.
I'm pretty sure I am not touched by the spirit. I can spot a sister worker so fast.
Yeah. Like asking if you guys, what church do you go to? Like before, that is not interest. They're interested, but they are not showing interest.
Yeah, they're like, why are you dressed like that?
That's how they're translating it, is that they're showing interest because they noticed your spirit.
Well, in the past, it would have been like, this person's dressed really interesting. The internal monologue would be like, this person's dressed really weird. I wonder if they have to do that, or is that a religious thing, or what? Nowadays, they might say like, oh, I noticed how you're dressed. Were you on Hulu?
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions are interpreted as like positive interest for some reason. Like if they ask you, it's because they want to be part of it too.
True.
Is there just like curiosity?
Mm-hmm.
Although curiosity isn't something that 2x2s know about.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Oh man, we're hit 2 hours.
Yeah.
Servants and handmaidens. Yeah, servants and handmaidens.
Final one, servants and handmaidens. I don't know. Like, did you guys hear this a lot?
Yeah.
Like,
Not until I was with you.
I don't think I've heard this one.
I always heard it in prayers, especially. And granted, this may be because there is somebody in my life growing up who used this phrase a lot.
And be with thy servants and handmaidens wherever they are.
I have heard that. I have heard that in prayer. Yep.
And like, it's just such a strange, like on the surface, it's like, oh, okay, that sounds like normal, like kind of Bible, old English speak or whatever.
Middle English.
but in reality, like, I mean, the servants is one thing. Handmaidens, what the fuck?
Well, now we have the Handmaid's Tale, right? We have the Handmaid's Tale now.
I know.
Yeah. It'd be a good idea
to be fair, we've had. What was that?
The book is old. We had it back then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the Handmaid's Tale has been out since like the 70s or something.
2x2s don't read
books.
Well, they don't read books about
not about this.
About that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We were reading Ayn Rand, not
Yeah,
not who wrote the Handmaid's Tale again?
I don't remember.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's a whole language.
Yeah.
You could do a whole podcast just on like the language built around the ministry, like going into the harvest field, spreading the seed.
Right.
There's all kinds of stuff. None of that means anything, by the way. None of that means anything at all. None of that happens. Very little. Back to my thing about how very, very precious few little number of conversions they actually have. But there's this whole language built around it that makes it sound very poetic and almost sort of like Shakespearean, like these servants and handmaidens spreading the seed through these harvests that are ready, these fields that are ready for harvest. That doesn't mean anything and nothing's happening.
But it demotes the handmaidens in a way too. Like, it makes the handmaidens sound like lesser than. Like, we watched Conclave last night at your suggestion, Mike, and there's those scenes where they're in the cafeteria eating, and the men are all being waited on by the women, and that's exactly what convention is like, right?
Yeah.
When in doubt, the brother workers are going to be waited on by women, including sometimes sister workers.
Yep.
And handmaidens sounds like a lower position. Even though servants is supposed to sound humble, they don't mean it that way.
Right. And I just Googled it, and like handmaiden and handmaid are literally the same thing. But like, if you were to say handmaid if you were to say handmaid in your testimony or in your prayer, it would just sound a little bit weird, like handmaid. But handmaiden is.
But handmaiden sounds littler.
Yeah.
Bible-y.
Yeah.
It does. It sounds little and cute.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah. There's a whole language around it.
This theme of innuendo throughout the entire video, honestly.
Well,
we could do a whole
Kyle was
separate.
just talking about some things that really, I was trying really hard not to laugh.
We could do a whole seperate episode on innuendo.
Yeah, we do a whole 2x2 after dark.
Oh man.
Well, we all just want to do better in the coming
Yeah,
days.
thanks for hanging out with us
Yes.
for 2 hours, everybody.
Yep, that
Who
was
did?
fun.
It was a nice little video.
Yeah, I feel like my
little
thoughts have
video
been
for a
shared.
nice little Saturday night.
Yes, hopefully we haven't been a
It's funny
yet,
because
and
like
hopefully we have
the
actually.
4 of us chat every day online, but we don't actually talk like this very often. So it's
Yeah.
always fun to
Yeah.
get together
No,
and
it's
do
fun.
this.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.